Hello again, and thank you for staying with us. The EFF has joined calls for the establishment of a Parliamentary Portfolio Committee to oversee the Presidency's affairs. The Presidency is one of the biggest state portfolios without a formal oversight committee. Now, the political analyst Sysman Motloung joins us to unpack this further. Sysman, a pleasure to have you on the program this evening. Now, I want to start with this quotation. When the ANC believes it is correct, it will not hesitate to use its majority in Parliament to push through decisions. Now, that was the Deputy President's response to these questions about President Cyril Ramaphosa's Phala robbery scandal. Many would argue that there are no surprises there of this collective stance on the part of the ruling party.
Yeah, definitely. What you see happening now is similar to what Mr. Zuma was doing. Some would remember at some point Mr. Zuma used to argue that the opposition has been defeated politically. They've been defeated in the National Assembly because of the ANC majority. This is what democracy, in terms of a free elections, have given the ANC. Now they know they cannot defeat the ANC in the Assembly. They run to the courts. In this way, they politicize the courts. And this used to be what Mr. Zuma really spoke about when he responds to detractors. Now we see the same thing happening now with the Phala scandal, how the ANC definitely is using that majority to protect the president, not so much really looking at a critical analysis of the incidents and accusations that are around the president to allow a particular process to unfold that eventually would give them a conclusive decision-making point. We see in this regard that they do not allow that commission of inquiry into Phala affairs because they feel that what the panel decided on was really not necessary, given that SARS has also spoken recently and the public protector recently speaking, and these two institutions have absolved Mr. Ramaphosa from any criminality.
Now, posturing is very telling when considering political matters. One then wonders whether by saying this, does it mean that Ramaphosa can indeed trust his second-in-command, despite the warnings after the ANC's elective conference that with Machete as deputy, Ramaphosa may still need to look over his shoulder?
It really depends on what Mr. Machete's intentions are. Recently, what we heard him say in Parliament was somebody who makes that impression that he's on Mr. Ramaphosa's side. He doesn't have any sinister motives. So this could be, if there's anything that he's doing, it's really underhand tactics that will emerge later on. But I don't think at some point Mr. Machete will be so ambitious that he will topple Mr. Ramaphosa, because in a way, for me, it will be uncharacteristic of a disciplined cadre of the ANC, like they usually refer to themselves. So if he has to be mischievous and see how he could push Mr. Ramaphosa out of position, it will really reveal something of Mr. Machete maybe most of the public members are not really aware of.
Now, it's still early days for Mr. Machete in this a new role as the Deputy President of the Republic. Let's look into this role. The new Deputy President said that as the leader of government business, he would indeed be cracking the whip on ministers who did not answer members of Parliament's questions on time or at all. Are you even convinced that he's the man to really shake things up by giving this kind of response here?
You know, it is difficult to say if he will be harsh or he will be somebody who's complacent in office. But when you look at his track record as the Treasurer General in the NC, he is somebody who presided over a period where employees were not paid. And maybe looking at that and to see in terms of the public views, there was nothing much that people saw that Mr. Machete was doing as an effort to resolve this. But it was mainly something that he says, at some point we have to restructure the organization, lay off some people, fine-tune the organization because it has a very big overall payment of wages. So they have to reduce their human resources. Those are people who can criticize him on that. Yet, when you listen to him and you want to say what he says is an expression of what he wants to do, this is his intention. You want to give him that benefit of a doubt to see if he will ever at all make true of that. But we have seen over time in the ANC or even in Parliament, ministers have not been too responsive when it comes to answering their questions in Parliament. That's why we have such a big number of outstanding questions yet to be responded to by them.
Now, as the man responsible for government business, Machete would, amongst others, lead government's efforts to really fast-track land reform as well as agricultural support. Give us your assessment of the task that really lies ahead of him in this regard.
Yeah, this is a big thing. And it is a matter of how you listened to Mr. Ramaphosa previously, that any policy around land reform should be one that does not jeopardize the ability of the country to produce food. So it's about food security. And then you also want to look as to which land will be transferred to those who are landless. When we look at it, is it in urban areas? Has it been developed yet? Is it somebody who already has built something on it? Or are we talking about vacant land for housing? And if it's vacant land, how far is it from the urban centers where people look for jobs? And if government is already introducing industries in plan for settlements. So this is something that has to be considered carefully. Yet you have a very impatient side, the leftists in our country, who are really adamant that there has to be reform. Yet there is no policy outcome or explanation from their side as to if you are to transfer land quickly to people now, what the plan is. So this is a very contested area. And our country, I think, it definitely needs to strengthen investment in agriculture so that we don't depend so much on importing food from Europe, from Russia, for certain grain. It has to be somehow work that we produce ourselves. So the last part is about the capacity of young people to be farmers. Our government should invest more on that side to ensure that there are more young people who are willing to be farmers. So we have had previously as well, those who are already working, government is not supporting them adequately in terms of implements and instruments for them to work as farmers. So funding is very important.
As we wrap up, I mean, on top of his responsibilities, Paul Machete would also be the special envoy to South Sudan and also lead peace efforts on the continent as well as required. Quickly tell us, what do you make of this?
For me, I think it could be a new terrain for him because we only know him domestically. But I think it is something that he can do. Remember here, it is not a personality. Our foreign policy is not mainly about the person himself, but he has a group of specialists from DECO and the security experts. So there are people who will be working with him. I think what he will be working around is already something that Mr. Mabuza was working on, emphasizing on our position on a conflict resolution that balances the scales to ensure that there is no further eruption of conflict. This is what I think South Africa has been talking about through African Union, that we want to see a decade of where they talk about guns down. So this is something that he will be emphasizing on. It is not something new. We cannot expect anything innovative from him as a deputy president, but he will be working around the policy that is already known in the sector.
That was political analyst Sysman Motloung.